Okay, so I made this video before, but when I last made it, I sort of just had a camera pointing at my computer, which, not the best quality. So I'm gonna do this again, but this time I'm gonna use the software that basically just records what's on my screen. So this is a fan concept that I posted in, as you can see here, February 25th, 2018. And basically, I think that Warframe, or by their Digital Extremes, used this fan concept in conjunction with another fan concept, this one, which was actually posted before mine, to basically make Grendel. Like, I think this was the basis for the Warframe Grendel. And I'm going to go over why and a little bit more of the specifics. So as you can see here, I post about his first ability can involve frantically consuming his enemies for added health and armor, or various other benefits, and then slowly digesting them for a steady health regen, or expelling them partially digested in either a spray or pool of corrosive stomach acid. I said for range, this is actually going to be important later on, but for range, perhaps give him a frog's tongue and let him also grab bunches of nearby enemies with his hands. See, I wasn't sure how consuming enemies would work at range, but remember that because that's going to be important later. They did not end up implementing this idea, but basically it was a taunt ability. His fourth ability, this ended up being his second, could be a toggle ability that ramps up his metabolism, allowing him to regain energy for each enemy consumed and a slow and steady energy regen alongside health and armor, and also reducing all incoming damage and increasing outgoing damage for himself. Now you'll notice down here, no wait, I'm not even logged into that account. I was going to say, I think after a time you're not allowed to edit your posts anymore, so it's not like I went back and edited this. In fact, it doesn't even say it's been edited, so like obviously this is what I posted back then. Wait a minute, I say I edited it, so why doesn't it say it was edited? Anyway, point is, you know, this was my idea, basically. Eat enemies, spit them out with corrosive stomach acid, get health and armor and energy and all this other stuff, and increase damage and damage redirection. And that's basically what Grendel ended up being. Granted, it wasn't exactly like that, but you get those stat bonuses exactly as I said them. Instead of like a regen, it's like you get an energy multiplier and you get more armor, more health, and I think the damage you take, if you've got like enemies in your stomach, the damage is like directed to them in much the same way that Nidus's parasitic link works. Could be mistaken, but I don't think I am. And I talk about using an alternate resource. I called them at the time nutrition stacks, and Grendel does in fact use enemies in his stomach as an alternate resource. So they did end up implementing that too. I'm going to come back to this because there is one ability that they just copied word for word that is unique to my idea. But basically, this guy basically had the same idea but different. He even went into more detail about numbers. I couldn't do that. I don't have a mind for numbers. But basically, this guy, he said, rather than like a frog's tongue or something, he said the void warp hole on Oni's stomach is opened and will pull in, and this is where it differs from how it actually turns out, any enemy projectiles. So he wanted to focus on eating their like bullets and stuff. But he did say that they could be consumed when they're like low health or something. But that's not the way it works with how they actually implemented it. But like this is important, the void warp hole on his stomach. That's actually how they ended up doing the long range and the close range eating. He literally has a hole in his stomach, like a mouth, and the enemies are sort of like one by one, like they're atomized and sucked in, sort of like a black hole singularity thing. So they used his idea, not only the void warp hole, but also the fact that it's Oni based. They did end up, they used his sort of like his thematic, his theme that he had, and regurgitate this one, leaks of void infused slime. basically regurgitate, but I think he had a more like they're already melted and it sort of spews slime rather than just like partially digested enemies like I suggested. Now here's where his is like completely different, and that's that it has a sort of exalted weapon, which is a mace. Now they did ship Grendel with like a signature weapon, and that is his masseter, I think it's called. Yeah, I googled it recently. And when we look at his, he actually had art concept. Like here, so you can see there's the stomach, mouth, and the horns, and horns, stomach, mouth. They did not completely, like obviously there's like big differences between his fan concept and the end result, but you can see even in the weapon that they clearly used his idea for the visuals and for the theme. And you can find these threads if you Google them. They're archived on the forums, but if you Google only the gluttiness and you Google Polyphagus, the glutton warframe, if you Google the titles, or if you just Google Polyphagus warframe, it'll be the first result if you use Google. So, and now back to the one thing that they definitely copied word for word. I thought this would be his third mobility, but you know, they ended up making his fourth. But his third ability could be something to increase his mobility, like rolling up into a ball that crashes into enemies, bouncing off of walls and other obstacles, creating shockwaves that knock enemies into the air and on their backs, serving as crowd control and damage, and just as a way to more quickly get from point A to point B. Now you'll notice this is Pulverizer word for word. This is what it does. This is the effect it has, and it's just, this is my idea that they eventually made reality. You know, they made some obvious changes. They tweaked this and that, but this, that remains completely the same. That's pulverized. That's the meatball. That's what they like to call it, the spicy meatball. But yeah. So, you know, it's very obvious if you look at these threads, if you look at his fan concept art, especially mind you, of the weapon and the fact that it's Oni themed and like gluttony themed, like obviously. Now I will acknowledge that there is a good chance that maybe this is derivative. Maybe this derivative word. What's the word for something that just like it can't be copyrighted because anybody could have thought of it? It's just too. I don't know what the word is, but there's a word that describes things of that nature that are just they're too, like anybody could have come up with it. And I mean that's even evidenced by the fact that I literally made this a month after, sometime like not long after. My cat's looking for my attention. Sometime long after, basically, okay, whatever, I'm not good with numbers, but he made this on January 19th, towards the end of January, and I made this on February 25th, towards the end of February. So like a couple weeks in between, we both thought of a gluttony warframe, and we both posted on the forums. So it could be coincidence, sure. I mean, I doubt it is, because it's too similar in a lot of ways that just make me think, okay, they took our mesh of ideas, our very raw concepts, and they sort of refined them a bit. I mean, they should have refined them a little bit more. Everybody's saying that they shipped him needing a rework, and there's some truth to that. But yeah, especially just the pulverize. Like, this is just... Like he described it in the dev stream preview as a Kirby frame, but Kirby doesn't do this. Kirby floats. He sucks in enemies and he floats. He turns into a stone and falls and slams to the floor, but he doesn't roll like this. At least maybe in one game. I don't know which game that would be, but this is like not classic Kirby, at least. This is very specifically my idea. So the meatball, that's too similar to my idea, just in execution and everything. How they did it is exactly how I imagined it would be done. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's really cool that I asked for something and I literally just got what I asked. Granted, it took 2 years. But the fact that they might have taken a request, an idea, a concept and actually made it official, there's something mind-blowing about that. Like, even if they didn't steal my idea, even if they didn't like take inspiration from it, whatever words you want to use to describe whatever they might have done, you know, like, I'm leaving room for doubt there, because there is reasonable doubt there. The fact of the matter is, I asked for something and I got exactly what I asked for, so there's something awesome about that. But yeah, and you'll see, I'll show you Grendel's alternate helmet. I made this video before, so they're like right there in the search results, because yeah, I made this video, but it was like a bootleg video. Like, if you go to the theaters and you take your camera and you hold your camera up to the screen, nobody wants to see that. But yeah, see, he's got the horns, he's got the mace-like weapon, and you know, he's got the meatball. And the eating and the vomiting and the using enemies as sort of like a resource pool and to buff his own health, but then he could also buff his teammates' health. And, you know, I mean, they just took it, they refined it, they should have refined it some more. I'm going to say that again. Grendel's basically my baby, my brainchild, but he still needs some work. And that's coming from the guy who literally designed him, maybe. Possibly, probably, but yeah. See, what they did was, I'm gonna actually go into game now and show off. I don't know if that'll cause issues with the recording. You know what? I'm gonna say stay tuned for part 2, where I actually try out I'm using a new recording software. I've used the Xbox Game Bar and all these other softwares, but this one actually came free with my desktop. It's called the NVIDIA GeForce Experience, and apparently it lets you stream and record not only games but whatever's on your screen. So I'm going to end this recording and I'm going to start up a new one, so look forward to part 2 where I actually show off Grendel if you haven't already seen him. So I mean, you could probably Google him and look it up, but if you just want to watch it on my channel, I don't know why you would. This is not quality content. I am an amateur, a novice, but if you want to watch it here, just stay tuned for part 2. So I press, okay, this keyboard shortcut, Alt F9, and the video will end, and boot.